she was pregnant. Briefly, she toyed with the idea of disappearing until after the baby was born. Going into hiding was preferable to facing her father with the truth. George Raymond had dedicated his life to serving God and others, and having to confess what she'd done didn't bear contemplating. Hannah loved her father deeply, and the thought of disgracing him, the thought of hurting him, brought a pain so strong and so sharp that tears instantly pooled in her eyes. "Please, God," she prayed once more, "don't let me be pregnant." Slowly rising from the floor, she swayed and placed her hand against the wall as an attack of dizziness sent the room spinning. She staggered into her bedroom and fell on top of the mattress. Kicking off her shoes, she sat up long enough to reach for the afghan neatly folded at the foot of the bed. Spreading it over her shivering shoulders, she gratefully closed her eyes. Sleep came over her in swells as though the ocean tide had shifted, lapping warm, assuring waves over her distraught soul. She welcomed each one, eager for something, anything that would help her escape the reality of her situation. It had happened in mid-July, only 3 short weeks after the tragic accident that had claimed her fiancé's life. Her father had been out of town, officiating at a wedding in Yakima. He was staying over and wasn't scheduled to arrive back in Seattle until late Saturday afternoon. Hannah had been invited too, but she couldn't have borne sitting through the happy event when her own life was filled with such anguish. How grateful she'd been that her father hadn't asked her to travel with him, although she knew he would have welcomed her company. Before he left, George Raymond had asked if she'd take a load of boxes to the mission house in downtown Seattle. He'd done it, Hannah knew, in an effort to draw her out of the lethargy that had claimed her in the weeks following Jerry's funeral. She waited until late in the afternoon, putting off the errand as long as she could, then loaded up the back of her father's old Ford station wagon without much enthusiasm. Hannah had driven into the city, surprised by the heavy flow of traffic. It wasn't until she'd found a parking spot in the alley in back of the mission house that she remembered that Seafair, the Seattle summertime festival celebrating ethnic heritages and community, was being held that weekend. The whole town was festive. Enthusiasm and good cheer rang through the streets like bells from a church steeple. Several Navy ships were docked in Elliott Bay, and the famed torchlight parade was scheduled for that evening. The city sidewalks and streets were crammed. None of the excitement rubbed off on Hannah, however. The sooner she delivered the goods, the faster she could return to the safe haven of home. She'd been on her way out the door when she was waylaid by the mission director. Reverend Parker seemed genuinely concerned about how she was doing and insisted she sit and have a cup of coffee with him. Hannah had chatted politely, trying not to be impatient, and when he pressed her, she adamantly claimed she was doing well. It was a lie, but a small one. She didn't want to think about how angry she was, how bitterly disillusioned. Others had borne even greater losses. In time, she'd heal. In time, she'd forget. But not for a while. The pain was too fresh, too sharp. Hannah knew her friends were worried about her, but she'd managed to put on a facade that fooled most everyone. Everyone, that was, except her father, who knew her so well. "God works in mysterious ways," Reverend Parker had told her on her way out the door. He'd paused and gently patted her back in a gesture of love. Until Jerry's death, Hannah had never questioned her role in life. When others grieved, she sat at their sides, comforted them with the knowledge that whatever had befallen them was part of God's will. The words came back to haunt her now, slapping a cold hand of reality across her face. Several had issued the trite platitude to her, and Hannah had quickly grown to hate such meaningless cliches. God's will. Hannah had given up believing all the religious jargon she'd been raised to embrace. If God was so loving and so good, then why had he allowed Jerry to die? It made no sense to her. Jerry was a rare man, good and godly. They'd been so much in love, and even though they were engaged to marry, they'd never gone beyond kissing and a little petting. They'd hungered for each other the way all couples deeply in love do, and yet Jerry had always managed to keep them from success.